Hello, good day everyone. You are still tuning in on our subject, disaster readiness and risk reduction. For this week's lesson, we will be focusing on discussing hydrometeorological hazard. So, for us to be guided on our today's discussion and activities, we should proceed first on our objectives. So, these objectives should be attained at the end of our discussion for today. Number one, recognize signs of impending hydrometeorological hazards. Number two, interpret different hydrometeorological hazards. So, again, I will repeat this objective should be attained at the end of our discussion for today. Okay, so for the first activity on our learning kit, you can see there the activity number one, I watch. So what you need to do is to watch the YouTube video that I included here in this activity. So what you need to do is to watch it and of course reflect on what you've watched. And of course, you have to answer the question, what are the plans that should be done by the residences concerned in that specific area where typhoon happened. So the title of that particular video is Bagyong Ulysses Weather Update. Again, you need to write your answer on the space provided. So let's discuss first what is typhoon. So the word typhoon came from the word taipang, which means great or big wind. It is a Chinese term. It is also termed hurricane or tropical cyclones. Typhoon is a term used in the Western Pacific. Hurricane is the name given to those storms at Atlantic Ocean and Eastern Pacific. While tropical cyclones is the name given by countries near the Indian Ocean. So what you need to remember in this specific idea is that every weather disturbance that happen in a particular area has its own unique name. Okay, so do not be confused by the terms that we have mentioned here. Okay, now let's talk about how typhoon is being formed. So number one, it is because of the evaporation of warm ocean water. So within the ocean, assume that the water is boiling. Of course, the vapor will come up. And of course, the more vapor that will come up to the sky and of course to the cloud, um, there will come a time that it cannot hold its pressure. So that is what we call now the tropical depression. Number two, atmospheric instability, which pertains to the unstable atmosphere of the Earth, which may result to several changes in the weather. So the climate change is one of the factor why typhoon is being formed. So remember, it's because of the activities performed by every individual. That's why we experience climate change. And sometimes we experience El Nino or La Nina. Number three, in the lowest layer of the Earth's atmosphere, which is what we call the troposphere, the presence of high humidity is required. Humidity pertains to the quantity of water vapor in the air. So, here in the Philippines, the climate is so humid because we are in a tropical country. And that's why we mostly experience typhoon. Number four, sufficient Coriolis energy to form a low pressure center. Okay, so meaning to say, if there is a lesser energy exerted for the natural process or natural movement of air, there will become a tropical depression. So from that tropical depression, there will become a typhoon. Number five, a pre existing low level disturbance. So this is also a factor on how typhoon is formed. It's because if there is already an existing weather disturbance and it so happened that there is also uh, so much water vapor that will go to the atmosphere, of course, it will contribute to the typhoon formation. And number six, wind shear, which is vertically low. So remember, most of the time we tend to take mistakenly that typhoon happens in a typhoon happens through a natural process at all times. So remember, typhoon might happen because of the abnormality within the air system. Okay, the Philippines takes the impact of most typhoon landfall, while China and Japan are the countries which are being impacted less by typhoons. However, China has the most number of recorded typhoon landfall. So, as I have mentioned earlier, we are living in a tropical country and we mostly experience typhoon. And sometimes typhoons that is being formed or already happened within China and Japan will eventually go to our place. So how are we going to name typhoon? Since we are in the Philippines, of course, we are using the Filipino language. So meaning to say we are using Filipino names. So in the Philippines through the um, performance or activity done by the Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical, and Astronomical Services Administration, or commonly known as PAG-ASA, they are responsible in providing names for typhoons approaching the country. The names given by are the following. Usually, they are Pinoy names. So we have here examples: Pedring, Bebeng, Waning, Rosing, and of course, other Filipino names. Bagyo is the Filipino term for tropical cyclone. Bagyo were given name by the Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical, and Astronomical Services Administration. So what we have mentioned earlier, once it enters the Philippine Area of Responsibility (PAR), according to Pag-asa, there are around 19 tropical cyclones or storms which enter the Philippines each year. However, not all tropical cyclones that enter the Philippines make a landfall. Usually, only 6 to 9 make landfall. So, most of the time, Philippines is one of the countries in the world who mostly experiences typhoon or bagyo in layman's term. But it doesn't mean that all of those typhoon will make a landfall. Remember, only 6 to 9 make landfall, and this landfall will result to a devastating effect. So how are we going to do a public storm warning signal, or when will this public storm warning signal will be or should be raised? So again, the Pag-asa or the government or this government agency is the one responsible for raising typhoon warning signals. Again, once it reaches the Philippine area of, of responsibility, we are concerned with it. Okay, so public storm signal number one is being raised if the weather disturbance is expected within 36 hours. So they are announcing it ahead of time. Signal number two, expected within 24 hours. Signal number three, expected within 8 hours. And signal number four, expected within 12 hours. So meaning to say, the nearer the typhoon to a specific place, the higher the signal number. The signal number of typhoon on an area which may be affected is based on the following. Number one, the intensity of weather disturbance, whether it is just a simple typhoon or a super typhoon. Number two, the size of circulation. So we are pertaining here on what particular area can be covered by that typhoon. Okay, number three, the forecast direction, because most of the time, even though Pag-asa already forecasted that the type or that this particular typhoon will go to this specific place, there are still other instances where it will be redivert to other places. And number four, the speed of the tropical storm or typhoon. So remember, the bigger or the higher the speed of the typhoon, it will easily sweep up our places. Now let's talk about thunderstorm. A thunderstorm is a type of storm categorized by the occurrence of lightning. Its sound on the earth is known as a thunder. Thunderstorm is also called as an electrical storm, a lightning storm, or a thunder shower. These are frequently attended by strong winds and heavy rains, which may result to downburst wind, large hailstone, and flash flood. So there are times that we mistakenly identified rains as a thunderstorm and a thunderstorm as a simple rain. But remember, during a thunderstorm, there is a presence of thunder coming from the sky. And of course, if the thunderstorm or if a thunder will hit a specific place, of course, it will be destroyed. And what will happen if an individual will be hit by the thunder? Of course, he or she might get injury, or worst thing is to die. Okay, this is an example of thunderstorm as you can see in the on the picture. Okay, all thunderstorm require three stages on how it will be developed. Number one is the cumulus stage. This is the first stage of the thunderstorm. It is also known as the developing stage. In this stage, warm air rises because it is lighter than cold air. Warm air condenses into a cumulus cloud when the air is moist. So earlier I've mentioned to you that most of the time in a higher temperature, water molecules will go upward go in an upward motion, and it will form a cumulus stage. Number two, or the second stage, is the mature stage. Due to warm air, this air spread out, which resulted to the appearances of an anvil shape. Cumulonimbus incus, or in Latin term anvil, is the resulting cloud. In this stage, the warmed air stops to rise upon reaching the area of the atmosphere with a warmer air. So, meaning to say, in this particular area, all of the moisture or all the water molecules will be collected in the sky. And of course, we have here the last stage, which is the dissipating stage. In the dissipating stage, the downdraft and the clouds take over the updraft. Because of this phenomenon, cloud droplets do not form because warm air can no longer rise. This occur about 30 minutes. And in this dissipating stage, we might experience here a strong falling of water or strong rain. Okay. Now let's talk about the hazards of thunderstorm. So we have different hazard that is being done because of the thunderstorm. Number one is the cloud to ground lightning. These lightnings are capable of igniting, which can cause wildfires and fatalities. Acid rain is also a risk formed by lightning because of the precipitation with low potential hydrogen level. So lightning is one of the factors which contribute to a huge fatality or devastating effect of thunderstorm. So it can ignite a fire, and of course it can even cut trees and buildings. Okay, number two is hail. As you can see on the picture, bigger um big amount of ice. It may result to hailstorm. This is the result of thunderstorm that extends to the ground. Hails are concentric larger of layer of clear ice with green pigmentation and is commonly occurred within mountainous areas. So usually hailstorm is being formed because of the presence of cold air within the clouds, and this may cause a devastating effect because this hailstorm can grow even bigger. Okay, number 3, tornadoes and water sprouts. A tornado is otherwise known as a thundercloud. It is a forceful spinning column of air. Tornadoes are seen as visible funnel in which the thin end reaches the ground. Its circle usually composed of dust and debris from places which is passed through. But remember, um, tornadoes can also happen within the ocean. Okay, and it will carry, of course, water. And if it will happen within our land, it will carry sand particles. Number 4 is the downburst. Downburst is another hazard of thunderstorm. Downburst winds can be dangerous to agricultural crops, aircrafts, and structures as it may uproot plants, affect the landing and taking off of aircrafts, and damage weak infrastructure. As what you can see on the picture, the sky already released a big amount of water. It is what we call the downburst. And it, of course, because of its excessive force, water falling from the sky, infrastructures will be damaged. And of course, if there are flying objects from the sky, it will also be affected. Flash flood. A flash flood is also known as rapid flooding. Flash flood washes away rivers, basin, houses, animals, and anything along its way. It may occur due to heavy rains associated with some other circumstances like release of water from dams, river overflow, river or lake pollution, and other. In other countries where there is snow, flash flood may be caused by the melting of ice or snow. Flash flood may cause the collapse of dams, roads, bridges, and other structures. So do not be confused with flash flood and, of course, storm surge. So flash flood happens because of the excessive amount of water within the land, and sometimes it happens because of the damaged dams and damaged drainage systems. Okay, this is an example of flash flood. Flash flood induced by heavy rain. The occurrence of flash flood may be due to the following reason. First is rapid heavy rains on an area with soil that cannot absorb the amount of water. So remember, during our last discussion regarding sinkhole, I've mentioned to you that there are certain types of land where water cannot penetrate to it. So this is an example of this one. Collection of overspill in channels and river which may form into a larger volume of fast flowing water and debris. So of course, if there will be an excessive collection of water in a specific area, there will come a time that it will that particular area will no longer hold another amount of water, which will cause, of course, to flash flood. Flash flood may also occur after volcanic eruption due to the destruction of lava flow to riverbanks, dams, and other. Because of volcanic eruption, or because of the effect of volcanic eruption, where so happened that the flows of water might be damaged because it will be replaced by the flow of lava or lahar. So happen that we might experience flash flood because there will be an abnormal flow of water already coming from the mountain. In the Philippines, usually in areas where dams are located like Pangasinan and Bulacan, flash flooding can also be caused by the release of dam water due to excessive rainfall or dam overflow. So remember, that is the reason why the government is spending so much effort and money for them to create a larger dam. So dam is not just about take storage of water, but rather dams are actually used for water to flow in its correct way. Structural failures of dam may also lead to release of large quantities of water without warning. So that is the reason why dams or dam management are always announcing ahead of time if there will be a sudden release of water. So general flooding occur in low-lying areas and zone with poor drainage after heavy rain. So here are the reason of flooding in the Philippines. The number one is the urbanization. Most of the time, it so happened that because of the informal settlers, which used the land that supposedly where water should be flow, um, we might experience flash flood because they are blocking the waterway. Number two, lack of planning for low lying areas. So the government should inform those living in a low lying areas that they are at risk during flash flood. Number three, water pollution. Because of the elements that we incorporated to water, or because of the hazardous chemicals being thrown to water, including the garbage and other things, of course, water pollution will contribute to flash flood. Number four, informal settlers, as I have mentioned in number one in the urbanization, the unplanned relocation sites of those informal settlers are being one of the factors why we experience flash flood because they are blocking the waterways. Number five, the flood control system. So the flood control system is one of the factors or causes of flash flood in the Philippines because of the miscommunication between the people and the government. So if the government is already making control system regarding flash flood, the people or the citizens should be informed because they are the one who will execute the plan. And number six is the climate change. So most of the time, there are times that we are not expecting flash flood, but it so happened that we experience flash flood. Why? Because of the water change. Or I mean, because of the climate change. So remember, I've mentioned earlier that in other countries, they experience flooding because of the melting of ice. And of course, we have here the storm surge. A storm surge is not a tsunami, although it is a tsunami like phenomenon. It is a kind of coastal flooding which is associated with typhoon. Its severity depends upon the location of the body of water, storm path, and timing of tides. A storm surge is an entry of sea or lake water pushed ashore by the strong winds in a storm. So, um, even though we are experiencing rain in our area, in the land area. Of course, sea might also experience that. And of course, if there will be an excessive amount of water being thrown to the sea because of the rain or because of the typhoon, there might be a storm surge. So remember, rising of water from the ocean. Okay, what is now El Nino? El Nino in the Philippines, when there is El Nino, it is associated with the word drought, where the people expects a higher temperature at a longer period of time. El Nino is declared by the forecasters when both ocean temperatures and rainfall from storms heads to the east. Trade winds also fades and change to the opposite direction when there is El Nino. So El Nino is associated with a drought or less amount of water and more time for um heat or more time for sunny season. Okay, so farmers don't want that because of course their farms needs water, and El Nino is actually um El Nino is associated actually with lack of water. Okay, now the opposite of El Nino is La Nina. La Nina, it is derived from the Spanish etymology, which means the little girl. It is also sometimes called El Viejo. An El Nino, or simply a cold event, La Nina incident is associated by the changes of weather patterns due to the cooling of water temperature across the east equatorial Pacific. And in if we will experience La Nina, there will be an excessive time for rain. And what will happen? Of course, flooding and other water related hazards. So now it's your turn because I'm done with the discussion. So it's time for you to answer your learning kit. So for your task to do, what you need to do is to answer each I mean identify the specific idea being portrayed by each sentence. Okay, so you have to write your answer on the space provided. And for things to ponder, so what you need to do in 5 sentences, share what you have learned in this week's learning kit. What topic did you find most interesting? Is there any difficulty you've encountered? Share your experience here. And of course, as part of your attendance for today, you have to comment your answer for things to ponder. But it doesn't mean that you will not write your answer on your learning kit. So you still have to write your answer on your learning kit, and after that, share it on the comment section. So that will be part of your attendance. And for the last activity, test yourself. So we have here the Venn diagram. So you have to compare and contrast El Nino and La Nina based on your understanding from our today's discussion. So that would be all for our today's discussion. See you again next week, and please stay at home, follow the protocols, and be safe at all times. This is still your teacher, Sir RJ, saying thank you and goodbye.